Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of Guatemala, we thank the Moroccan government for having loaned this beautiful city of Marrakesh to be the headquarters of the COP22. And we congratulate them for their professionalism by having set up a great event. I know that you all agree about that. I'd like to ask to give a big applause to all of our delegates and government officials who have been working tirelessly, and we congratulate the sectors of the civil society, academia, and indigenous peoples who have worked in the same way. Let's give them a big hand. On our side, we will know the accomplishments of Guatemala in several subjects. And for those who do not yet know, you will see how Guatemala has been a pioneer in developing the necessary legal instruments to be able to fully comply with our commitments. We are dividing this event in three parts. In the first and second parts, we will have joint interventions with government authorities, local governments, and the civil society with the support of the interinstitutional cooperation. The third part will be open to public interventions with questions and answers, and finally, the closing of the event. We emphasize that the government of the Republic of Guatemala promotes interinstitutional participation and empowerment with the central government, local governments, private sector, and civil society for adaptation and mitigation and financing, with the primary purpose of implementing the NDCs, which are the determined distributions at a national level. So I'd like to introduce our personalities and speakers who are sitting at the main table. They are Dr. Sidney Samuels, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources, MARN. Ambassador of Climate Change, Rita Michan, from the Ministry of External Affairs, MINEX. Mario Lemus Martinez, Mayor of San Juan Ermita, Chiquimula, National Association of Municipalities, ANAM. Oscar Núñez, representing Defensores de la Naturaleza. Mario Rivas, representing ACOFOP. Estuardo Castillo, representing the private sector, CACIF. Dr. Edwin Castellanos, the academia. Sergio Mucu, the indigenous peoples. And we begin our event with the words of His Excellency, Dr. Sidney Samuels, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources, MARN. And I would like to ask you to give him a big hand.
Thank you, Vida. Ladies and gentlemen, in an effort to contribute to the global ambition to establish a coherent, strong, and shared actions in order to implement the Paris Agreement, Guatemala would like to demonstrate to the world the importance of interinstitutional cooperation at national level in compliance with international agreements. I would like to thank all sectors involved in the organizing this side event of Guatemala, including the public and private sectors, academia, indigenous people, and civil society, who jointly and with support of the international cooperation have made this meeting in the framework of the COP22 possible. Today, we are proud to be at the forefront of building the legal pillars to address climate change as a transformative opportunity, as well as to propose viable mitigation mechanisms to achieve the goals set out in the nationally determined contributions. In addition, the country of Guatemala has advanced in the design of climate adaptation models to break with the paradigms of paternalism of the population affected by recurrent drought, which can be replicated in Central America. Guatemala is a country with a cultural wealth and great biodiversity. However, the living conditions of the population have been treated by inopportune and inequitable patterns of development. Climate change that has been manifesting itself in a harsh manner to vulnerable countries such as ours has increased the problems of poverty and food insecurity, which is affecting most of the population and has accelerated the loss and degradation of natural resources. An indisputable truth is that Guatemala is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, even though its contribution to the emission of greenhouse gases is insignificant. Currently, the country is advancing in a clear direction and based on interinstitutional alliances. It faces climate change and attends the affected population. The implementation of legal pillars and multi-sectoral planning depends on both public and private national funding and on the international climate financing that the developed countries have committed to contribute. You can count on the government of Guatemala, chaired by President Jimmy Morales, to put it into operation and transparent implementation of climate finance opportunities based on results. During the event, we will present the country's considerable progresses regarding mitigation mechanisms, such as the RED Plus project, climate adaptation models for the dry corridor, what we call in Spanish Corredor Seco, and private initiatives for the country's economy to develop with low emissions. I urge the representatives who accompany me on the main table to collectively rethink, transform, and provide joint solutions for the launch of new low emissions economic development model that can be a worldwide example of how one of most vulnerable countries to climate change achieves this in the field and with the local people. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And now we are entering the first part of this event. I'd like to present the first round of speakers who will be talking about the main initiatives in the context of climate change. And our first speaker is Oscar Hernandez Vela, international who provides technical support to the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources. Please.
Dear public, I will share with you the general presentation about the interagency cooperation for the implementation of the common goals, the NDC, the case of Guatemala, including the projects Lacandon, Guatecarbon, and the Caribbean. The presentation includes 5 subjects that you can see in the screen. Let's talk about the first one, country's situation. Guatemala is located in America in the Central America corridor. The population is around 16 million people, 51% of them are women. The wealth of Guatemala is his people 40% are indigenous people and 60% are non-indigenous. Half of the population is rural people, 40% are poor people, and 1 of every 6 Guatemalans are poor and extremely poor people. Guatemala has a lot of genes, species, and ecosystem. It's one of the megadiverse countries in the world. Let's talk now about the second subject, governance. There is a solid policy and legal framework ready for the action on climate change based on the National Plan, CATUM, 2032, the policy and the law of climate change, which are connected with the energy, forest, and economical agenda. It has implied a lot and strong consensus between the multiple sectors of Guatemala. The third subject is about NDCs. Let's start with our reflection. Guatemala, in one hand, is one of the 10 most vulnerable nations to the climate change, with, in the another hand, an insignificant greenhouse gases contribution, less than 0.1%. With this in mind, we can see in this graph that Guatemala, as a country, has defined as a goal to reduce in 11% the carbon emissions in a non-conditioned manner. If they are conditioned and with the support of the international cooperation, the reduction will be the double, 22% by the year 2030. In the screen, we can see the timeline of the Paris Agreement. The delegation of Guatemala participated last year in Paris, and on April this year, the President of the Republic has signed this agreement, and the last month, the National Congress approved the Paris Agreement, which means that this is a law in our country. Last month, we also celebrated that was approved the National Adaptation and Mitigation Action Plan by consensus in the National Council of Climate Change, which involves the governmental, non-governmental, indigenous, civil society, academy, private sector, among other important sectors in Guatemala. There will be a specific presentation with more details about this. The fourth subject are the advances, the progress in adaptation and mitigation. We are talking about both because of the importance of the balance between adaptation and mitigation, as the Minister Sidney Samuels said in the second National Congress of Climate Change 2 months ago. We will talk about mitigation, low emissions development. In the case of energy matrix, in the 2027, we expect a reduction of non-renewable resources, bunkers especially, and the increase of renewable resources like geothermal and solar. There is a great example about the private sector committed with Paris Agreement. In Guatemala exists a solar power plant with a capacity of more than 50 megas of electricity, which is the second largest in Latin America. Also, there is a strategy to reduce the forest consumption. We are talking about an AMA facility project, which expects to reduce the yearly emissions between 2 until 9 million of tons of dioxide of carbon, which represents an investing of 12 million and more than 250,000 beneficiaries. One of the main progress of the country is that Guatemala has invested with his own resources more than $340 million in the last 2 decades, which covers around 470,000 hectares, and they have benefited around 1 million people. Private sector is committed to the Paris Declaration. There is an important and innovative private sector that is betting to accomplish with NDCs. There are 2 main examples. The first one is a export with the support of the international cooperation, who has promoted the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture products. And in the other hand, in the case of transport mitigation, a key strategy is breaking the transport paradigm in the country with electromobility cars. We will have more details about this initiative after this presentation. In the case of forest land use, we have a national strategy for REDD+, which involves a close interinstitutional cooperation, where is the Ministry of Environment, whom is the focal point of the United Nations framework of climate change, together with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Forest Service, and the Protected Areas Council. There is also a joint work with Ministries of Finance and Economics, and joint work also with NGOs, local groups, and of course, the private sector. Half of the NDC goals belongs to the forest sector, and there is also an important mobilization of resources, around $24 million with the Forest Investment Program, around $100 million with the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, and also it is included in the new forest law which we call ProBosque. There are several early initiatives of REDD+, who are very important to the conservation and sustainable use of the forest cover in protected areas especially. We will talk later about Lacandon, Guatecarbon, and the Caribbean project. Now, let's see what is happening in the country with adaptation. There is an innovative model that presents a new paradigm to attend the people affected by drought. We are talking about the climate adaptation model in an area called dry corridor, which is based on recovering the indigenous and ancestral knowledge, the cultivation of local plants, chickens, local chickens, and the introducing with economical incentives of agroforestry systems. The model presents an integral solution for the Chortí region in its first stage. The impacts include food security, forest coverage, and improve soil quality, recovering the water provision at watershed management levels. We expect to scaling up this model to Central America dry corridor. We will talk about this later. Finally, we will talk about the national action vision. The country faces climate change with human face based on the strong political framework. There are several adaptation measures who are combined with low emission development strategies that you can see on the screen. And above all this, the multiple sectors have defined and they are launching a new economic development model based on low carbon plus climate resilient. It's a win-win bet for the country and for the world. Based on that, Guatemala is applying to several opportunities in climate change financing. We are talking in the screen about the multilateral climate funds, and there is also several important bilateral cooperation. As we see in indigenous language, Maltiosh, thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Amores de la Naturaleza. Now we have Oscar Núñez from Project Red Plus and Lacandon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for coming. Are going to present the Lacandon Forest for Life, our project in the National Park in the Mayan Reserve. I'm going to thank you to the European Union, the Germany government, and the initiative of BMZ and BMV and the IKI program, and the program of USAID in Guatemala, the Clima, Naturaleza y Comunidades. Defensores has more than 30 years working in environmental protection in Guatemala. We are a principal co-management of protected areas. We work with CONAP, as a National Council of Protected Areas. And our responsibility is more of 5% of all Guatemala country is our responsibility. is equivalent of the 15% of the SIGAP of the protected area system. We are management 500,000 hectares under management, 200 hectares of pristine forests, and 300,000 in sustainable development activities. We consider it with defensores have 80% of the biodiversity represented in our protected areas. Sierra de las Minas is a biosphere reserve, Bocas del Polo Chic, a wetlands, Naciones Unidas National Park, and Lacandon, with Javier is going to present the project. Javier is our Director of Development. Javier, thank you.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. Well, like Oscar says, here's important data from Guatemala. 30% is under protection, but with a lot of threats. 140,000 hectares we lost in the past decade, and but with a lot of opportunities like the Mayan Biosphere Reserve that holds a lot of natural and cultural heritage of Guatemala and the world, and has a carbon storage of more than 500 million of tons of CO2. New data is that in 2016, the deforestation was approximately 9,000 hectares in the area. The Lacandon project is a defensores and a community-based initiative. We have co-managed the park since 1999. It's a big park with a lot of people inside. 30 Mayan archaeological sites, an important endangered species for Guatemala and the world. Why a red project in Lacandon? As you know, as you saw in the last deforestation is highest in the region, but we have a lot of pristine forests in the park. So that's a threaten. About 100,000 hectares of pristine forest is threatened in the park. And the finances are not so, and the financial resources are not so wealthy in the park. Communities has a lot of experience in forest management. That's a big opportunity for the RED project. And unsustainable land use is present. Agriculture and grazing, cattle grazing are the principal productive activities. And also we have illegal logging and poaching that threatens biodiversity. Well, some of the activities that we have been doing in this RED project is the protection of natural and cultural resources through patrolling with the government of Guatemala, with CONAP, with the police, with the army, and also working very hard with communities to develop sustainable livelihoods. We have encouraged people to establish agroforestry systems which they can harvest the production. And we are working right now in markets and supply chains to become sustainable activities in the long terms. Also, we are working with women in education and health and microfinancing. Well, the outcomes of the project, right now we are the first project in Guatemala to be verified by BCS and the CCBS standards. We are generating more than 120,000 tons of CO2 per year in the park. The rates of forest change we have lowered to 500 hectares a year, and we promote the restoration of forests through agroforestry and reforestation. We calculate that 2,500 people are benefiting directly, and another 30,000 indirectly from the project. Well, the lessons learned. We have create capacities in local people. They know much more now about climate change and RED. We have worked with the national government in land tenure rights, and the The red activities, that's very important to reduce deforestation, had to be an answer to the family needs, economic and food security. The value change is our next challenges. We have production, and we have to link it to new value changes. And thank you for your attention. Just a short notice, tomorrow in the Global Landscape Forum, we are going to sign our first purchase agreement of carbon credits. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Defensores. And now we have another red project, Red Plus project of Guate Carbon. And our speaker is Sergio Guzmán.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Today I'm going to present our red project in Guatemala. To be in context, we work in the Mayan Biosphere Reserve also as Lacandon. The proponents or the owners of this project are the government of Guatemala, represented by CONAP, and the forest concessionaries that live in there in the country. The main objective of this Red Plus project is to reduce the deforestation, mitigate the climate change, and improve the quality of life of the people living in there. We see many opportunities for the project. One of them is to be in the voluntary carbon markets. Another one is to be part of the national determined contributions, which are taking place in Guatemala, and to be part of the World Bank, since Guatemala is almost going to sign a letter of intention with the carbon World Bank. This is how it looks, the area and the zone of the project. What we promote is to have several benefits: climate benefits, biodiversity benefits, and community benefits. That's why we have, between the climate benefits, reductions of about 6 million tons of CO2 during the first 10 years, and we are projecting 37 million CO2 tons during the period of 30 years. About the biodiversity benefits, we can see that there are a lot of species in this area because Guatemala is a hotspot. The Mayan Biosphere Reserve contains several species of plants, birds, amphibians, mammals, and reptiles. About the communities, they get also benefits. That's why we have the standard climate, community, and biodiversity, CCB. And they are supposed to improve, not supposed, they are improving the quality of life in several aspects: health, education, and ways of life. And the main objective of the community is to improve their quality of life and to improve the forest governance. All those activities are based on the forest concession model that Guatemala has. The government of Guatemala gave this area to the forest concessions, and they have been taking care of the area. That's why we have at least more than $6 million every year in business, timber and non-timber forest products. Also, we have more than 3,500 employments every year in these activities, and the participation of 11 forest concessions. Several people working every year in timber and non-timber activities. We take into consideration that these activities, they earn money above the national levels. 70% of the population in Guatemala lives, as we saw in the last presentation, in poverty in the rural areas. So this is proof that the forest concession model is successful, is working, and it has been recognized at a worldwide level as a forest model that is working. Also in this area, we have species of plants, amphibians, etc. And we have also archaeological sites, several. And we are doing also sustainable tourism. What the communities do in the Red Plus project, Water Carbon, is to take care of the forest. One of the most important activities is the forest fires control and prevention. And you can see several pictures here where they are working and getting to there to protect the forest. And we can show here how they did that work. You can see that the red line, inside of the red line, there is less deforestation than the normal rates outside where the forest concessions work. And one very important point is that Guatemala is celebrating 20 years of the peace agreements. There were several agreements. One of the agreements was the agrarian agreement. The government should give to the communitarian people at least 100 hectares of land to do sustainable development. And so we are celebrating 20 years that the forest concessions achieve the goal of the peace agreements in Guatemala. This month, the next month, we are going to have this celebration in the Mayan Biosphere Reserve. Our project is validated by CCB and BCS, and also in September, we got the site visit for verification, and we got good results. We are now verified also. We got about 1.2 million verified carbon units ready to be in the process of commercialization. The main goal or the final objective of the project is to reduce the deforestation, mitigate climate change, improve the quality of the people, and take care of the biodiversity. Thank you very much. I should say also that this project has been supported by several. One of them, as Oscar says, Rainforest Alliance through CNCG project and several other organizations who have been working. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Sergio. And now I want to say that Guatemala is a pioneer in the elaboration of the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which is our star, because it is one that will orient all actions of climate change for the state in this topic. So it is our cornerstone. It is being presented by Alejandra Sobenes.
Your Excellency, Minister of the Environmental and Natural Resources of Guatemala, Sidney Samuels, officers, media, delegates, and special guests. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to present to you the National Action Plan on Climate Change and show you how it is inserted into the National Planning and Programming System. The National Action Plan for Climate Change was prepared by the National Council on Climate Change and the Secretariat for Planning and Programming of the Presidency of the Republic of Guatemala. In 2009, Guatemala approved a national policy on climate change. This policy was the basis for the development of the framework law on climate change, one of the first in Latin America, and being enforced since 2013. The law contains the most important guidelines for state planning in the face of climate change. Under this law, it specifically creates the National Climate Change Council, orders the elaboration of the National Action Plan for Climate Change, orders the elaboration of the interinstitutional strategic plan, and orders the integration of the climate change in the public planning process of investment and the national planning system. In compliance with the law, in 2014, the preparation of the National Action Plan for Climate Change began. It was a process that took 2 years of consultations, coordinated by the Secretary of Planning and Programming of the Presidency of the Republic of Guatemala. It involved all sectors of the country represented in the National Climate Change Council, the government sector, civil society, indigenous peoples, universities, municipal governments, and the private sector. In September 2015, Guatemala presented its INDC, and in December of that same year, Guatemala signed the Paris Agreement and the Objectives of Sustainable Development. These circumstances made it necessary for Guatemala to adjust its National Action Plan on Climate Change to incorporate its international commitments. It represented an enormous effort for all sectors of the country that are presented today. The objective of the plan is defined in a clear and organized way, the main action and guidelines that must be followed by the governmental institution and its sectors in order to contribute in an efficient manner to the reduction of vulnerability in which most of the population is. The National Action Plan on Climate Change contains guidelines for adaptation and mitigation. It is developed by sectors. For each sector, an action plan is drawn up containing a frame of reference and a matrix that specifies the objectives, the results, the indicators, the term, the prioritized territory, and those who are responsible. Summarizing it, we can ensure that with a great effort from our country, climate change has been considered in the national planning system, and it goes as follows. We developed a national climate change policy, and based on it, we developed a framework law on climate change that mandates the national planning process. The law allowed to give the guidelines to build a national development plan, and this, together with the second national communication on climate change, were the basis for Guatemala to present its INDC in 2015. In that same year, 2015, Guatemala assumed the commitment to achieve the Sustainable Development Objectives and the Paris Agreement. The commitments were made in the INDC, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, and were collected and taken into account in the construction of the first National Action Plan on Climate Change. Our climate change law mandates that all public institutions develop their institutional strategic plans based on the National Action Plan. The law also mandates that the National Action Plan be updated according to upcoming national communications. as from the validity of the Paris Agreement, the National Action Plan will also be updated according to the new INDCs. The National Action Plan provides for a monitoring and evaluation mechanism. The national planning system will be guided by the principles and safeguards established by the Framework Law on Climate Change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alejandra. Now I'm pleased to announce the Project Caribbean and the Experiences of IDB Bank, presented by Fundaeco, through Dr. Edwin Castellanos. Please.
Located between the borders of Belize and Honduras, the network of protected areas of Caribbean Guatemala gathers an important natural and cultural wealth. Maya Kekchi, Garifuna, and Mestizo populations live within an immensely beautiful and biodiverse landscape and a local economy forged by a warm and rainy weather. The region has two seaports, Puerto Barrios and Santo Tomás de Castilla, one of the most active in Central America, facilitating trade as an important economic development driver. Fundaeco has been working in the Caribbean Guatemala for more than 25 years, establishing and managing protected areas with a territorial sustainable development approach that seeks the improvement of the livelihoods of people. Promoting economic development within communities by establishing, harvesting, and marketing agroforestry products such as black pepper, cardamom, rambutan, rubber, and timber. With its brand, the Conservation Coast, distinctive to the region, we guarantee sustainable production aligned with the management of protected areas and the involvement of local communities. We are achieving our goal thanks to the support of government agencies such as the National Council of Protected Areas, Coronado, and business institutions, including the Guatemalan Exporters Association, AHEXPORT, experts in developing value chains and their integration into international markets. The Conservation Coast includes a network of ecotourism sites and attractions within protected areas in the region, constituting a source of employment and income for local families, especially women and youth. The path of tropical forest in Las Escobas and Ensenada Verde, or the majesty of the Sarstún River, are beautiful and rich examples of what the Conservation Coast and the Caribbean region of Guatemala offers to national and international visitors. Our goal is to fight poverty while preserving the unique richness of natural habitats and ecosystems by providing effective alternatives that ensure both economic welfare and nature conservation. However, deforestation threatens to destroy biodiversity and the environment that sustains the livelihoods of thousands of families living in the region. Currently, a project of reduced emissions by avoided deforestation, RED+, is being developed in the region, working closely with communities, landowners, and local authorities to protect the remaining forests of the Caribbean Guatemala. This project will prevent the emission of 9 million tons of carbon dioxide, generating verifiable carbon units, VCU, that will enter the global carbon market and will improve the income of rural communities and the protection of globally important natural habitats, including the Neotropical Migratory Birds Corridor and the Mesoamerican Reef System. Our goal is to protect biodiversity and the natural richness. Our aim is to support the women and men of the Caribbean Guatemala that are fighting for an environmentally sustainable future and whose hard work is creating a center of local economic development. For their welfare and their dream for a better future. For an everlasting conservation coast. Join us.
Good evening, my name is Edwin Castellanos. I work for Universidad del Valle de Guatemala. I'm also the representative in the National Council for Climate Change for the private universities. And I have also the honor of directing a research center that is providing the baseline analysis for the project that you just saw in the video. The video is very explicit, it speaks by itself, so I don't want to add too much to it. I just want to emphasize the fact that you have heard about 3 different projects, but all of them have the same constant. All of them are developed in an area that is extremely rich in terms of biodiversity, cultural heritage, and also historical importance in terms of archaeological sites. All of these sites have been threatened by deforestation, and so these RED initiatives are extremely important for Guatemala and for the world to try to preserve not only the biodiversity, but also the historical richness of the areas. So as a university, we are very pleased to collaborate with the Ministry of Environment. We work closely with them to develop the adaptation and mitigation plan that you just heard of. And we have been also working closely with the different NGOs in the country to provide technical support for the different RED initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. And now I would like to call on Mayor Mario Lemus to explain and present the next video. Thank you.
No, ahorita había otro video. Experiencias de vida. Ok, él tiene presentación.
Buenas noches. Como alcalde municipal y miembro de la Mancomunidad de Municipios Copán-Chortí y en representación de 340 alcaldes de mi país, en esta oportunidad estamos participando en la COP22 para compartir el modelo de adaptación climática desarrollado desde los gobiernos locales. Este modelo manifiesta un agradecimiento muy sincero a una extraordinaria coordinación interinstitucional liderada por el señor Ministro de Ambiente y Recursos Naturales, doctor Sidney Samuel. Gracias, señor. Usted no hace lo que quiere, usted quiere lo que hace. Muchas gracias. También quiero agradecer al Fondo Multilateral de Inversiones, FOMIN, miembro del grupo BID, por ayudarnos a creer y a crear el modelo de adaptación climática en nuestro país. Pero hoy quiero agradecerle muy especialmente a Amal-Lee, directora de Cambio Climático de BID Washington. Al finalizar este evento quiero entregarle este documento para que lo pueda ver más tranquila en su casa o en su trabajo. Uno de los impactos de este modelo, que a continuación verán un video, es que rompe, como decía nuestro ministro, el paradigma de asistencialismo o paternalismo. Y otra cosa tan importante es que nos ha permitido tener a la persona, al ser humano, no como objeto de desarrollo, sino como sujeto de desarrollo. Acá queremos demostrar una inversión pública con altos retornos socioeconómicos y ambientales. Y algo importante, fíjense que hemos tomado tanto al sector mujer y este modelo nos ha permitido balancear las relaciones de autoridad en las familias, entre hombres y mujeres, en las comunidades nuestras, que por lo regular son machistas. Pero esto nos ha permitido ese balance. Y al final quiero decirles que este modelo de adaptación climático que ensayamos en la Mancomunidad Copancho Ortí, hoy estamos haciendo lo posible gracias a los esfuerzos del señor Ministro, doctor Sidney Samuel, de trasladarlo a 7 mancomunidades del corredor seco. Y aún más pensamos que más adelante podemos trasladarlo al corredor seco centroamericano. Así es que los dejo con el video.
Actualmente en la zona indígena Chortí de Guatemala se implementa un modelo territorial para adaptarse al cambio climático. En la región árida de Guatemala vive Juan. El clima está cambiando, haciendo la vida de Juan más difícil. La mancomunidad Copancho Ortí, conformada por 4 gobiernos locales, lidera y coordina a nivel territorial con los diferentes actores de la región con el apoyo del Fondo Multilateral de Inversiones FOMIN, miembro del Grupo BID. Implementan el proyecto Recuperación del Capital Natural del Corredor Seco y Adaptación Climática de su población.
El gobierno local trabaja en la incorporación de este modelo territorial de adaptación climática, incluyendo acciones dentro de su planificación municipal y coordinando con organismos del Estado e instituciones internacionales. Este modelo innovador con alta capacidad de negocios puede escalar de nivel local a regional, aportando beneficios e ingresos a las comunidades.
Con el objetivo de aumentar la resiliencia climática de personas como Juan, el proyecto rescata e implementa conocimientos ancestrales de los indígenas chortís, así como estudios científicos de la universidad local, para el aprovechamiento adecuado y responsable de los recursos. La población indígena chortí participa en actividades para adaptarse al cambio y variabilidad climática, aprendiendo técnicas de producción de aves criollas locales, buenas prácticas agrícolas, conservación de bosques y consumo de plantas alimenticias y medicinales. Juan recibe información climática anticipada para conocer cuándo sembrar y cómo prepararse ante el cambio climático. Para evitar la degradación ecológica, el proyecto prioriza actividades de recuperación y conservación de bosques, así como sistemas agroforestales. Representa un reto el que los pequeños poseedores de tierra accedan a mecanismos de financiamiento. Tal es el caso de los programas de incentivos forestales. Para ello, la Mancomunidad Copancho Ortí y el Instituto Nacional de Bosques, mediante una alianza innovadora para potenciar la efectividad de los programas de incentivos forestales, a fin de incrementar la cobertura forestal.
Me siento satisfecho que estoy dentro del programa de recibir incentivos forestales y que beneficia a muchas familias del municipio de Jocotán y de la región donde nosotros vivimos.
Volvamos con nuestro amigo Juan, que debido a los cambios en el clima le es difícil cultivar sus alimentos. Con las capacitaciones y asistencia técnica que recibe, está aprendiendo métodos de adaptación climática para cosechar y almacenar sus alimentos, aun cuando la situación sea desfavorable. Juan, como otros pobladores indígenas chortís, se han integrado a un nuevo modelo innovador de bancos de semillas. En ellos, los bancos comunitarios de semillas tienen un proceso de traslado de conocimientos de un socio a otro y una estrategia para proveer un sistema de producción adaptados a las comunidades indígenas.
Aquí ya no se piensa solo de un banco, sino con una parcela demostrativa, la parcela en el cual sacamos el producto para el sostenimiento del banco.
Hace algunos años, la esposa de Juan producía gallina criolla local para alimentar a su familia con huevos y carne, pero la producción de estas aves se vio afectada por condiciones climáticas. Al observar esta problemática en las familias indígenas chortís, la Mancomunidad Copancho Ortí identificó que el Centro Regional de la Universidad Nacional había descubierto una especie de gallina criolla que se adaptaba a las diferentes condiciones climáticas. Estas aves sobreviven periodos prolongados de escasez de lluvia y a enfermedades ocasionadas por estos fenómenos. Esta es la gallina criolla local o gallina de cuello desnudo. Se inició un proceso de recolección y rescate de genética de gallinas criollas locales para continuar con la producción en el Centro Regional de la Universidad Nacional. Posteriormente se introducen en las comunidades de la región indígena Chortí, que previamente fueron capacitadas en el manejo de aves, utilizando la metodología de enseñanza para adultos denominada Escuela de Campo ECA.
Ya que turística pati pues
Los padres de Juan conocían los beneficios de plantas alimenticias y medicinales locales. Estas se producían de forma natural en su comunidad, pero debido a prácticas inadecuadas de producción y lluvias irregulares, ha disminuido la disponibilidad para el consumo de estas. El proyecto trabaja en el rescate, reproducción y reintroducción de especies nativas locales, como el chipilín, la hierba mora, yuca, chatate y loroco. Con integración de las actividades de este proyecto se desarrolla a nivel piloto un modelo territorial de adaptación climática. Esto permite que Juan, su familia y muchos habitantes de la región han adquirido los conocimientos y herramientas para adaptarse a cambios y variabilidad climática. Se han logrado obtener 2.251 hectáreas incentivadas, con 1.600 familias beneficiadas a la fecha, más de $590.333 pagados, 19.540 aves reintroducidas y 1.285 familias beneficiadas con gallina criolla local, 5 bancos de semilla criolla, establecida con 700 familias asistidas técnicamente, 6 viveros de especies nativas, 700 familias beneficiadas con asistencia técnica y plantas nativas. Impactos del proyecto: generación de 500.000 jornales por año, consumo alimentario de alto valor nutricional por familia, 550 huevos y 80 kilogramos de carne al año. Capacidad de multiplicar 10 veces el capital inicial en bancos de semilla en 5 años. Ha demostrado ser una inversión pública con altos retornos socioeconómicos y ambientales.
I am so excited to present the next information to you. Guatemala, hear this. Guatemala has just ratified its agreement, the Paris Agreement, and we are now officially bound to send our official instruments to the New York climate, to the UN, the United Nations office in New York. So I would like to give Guatemala a big, huge hand. Congratulations to Guatemala. We made it. We did it. Okay, so now we are about to go into the second round of our special guest speakers. And let me introduce you to the Chief of Division of Climate Change from IDB Bank, Amal-Lee Amin. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Minister, and congratulations on the ratification. Excellent news, particularly here today in Marrakesh. So I'm delighted to be here, particularly now having seen this last video, seeing all the work that is underway in partnership between the bank, the IDB, and different organizations in Guatemala. It's really wonderful because I know we started, I think we really started to engage on the climate agenda in 2011. I think when we had an initial policy-based loan that I think formed a lot of the basis of the law, of the policy that we heard about, and the National Action Plan. And so it's really excellent to see all of this coming together, particularly in light of now the NDC under the Paris Agreement, but of course also the very specific areas of progress, particularly in the REDD+ agenda. And we're very, very happy to be partnering with the government in several areas under the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, the Forest Investment Programme, and also with other REDD+ activities. I think we have, I think it's around $50 million of portfolio in this area. And I understand the projects collectively could be impacting as many as 350,000 families, particularly in indigenous communities, particularly the poorest families. So it's just wonderful to really hear and actually to see that amazing video. And so I'm very, very happy to be here. I just want to say a couple of words about what we're doing at the IDB and how we're responding as an institution to the Paris Agreement, because we are really trying to align ourselves to ensure that we can be really more effective partners to governments, but also private sector clients in delivery of the Paris objectives. And we have a new initiative, NDC Invest, which I'm not going to talk about in a lot of detail now, but we do have a little video, which I think we can run. It is in Spanish. We have an English and Spanish version, but we thought it would be more appropriate to have the Spanish version here today. And so just to say that we very much hope to continue our good partnership and collaboration and really take it to the next level in further delivery and implementation of your NDC. Thank you.
Como socio estratégico ante el desafío del cambio climático en la región de América Latina y el Caribe, el Grupo Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo ha creado NDC Invest, un producto único que reúne todas nuestras actividades en una sola plataforma y que tiene como objetivo apoyar a los países de la región para que puedan transformar sus compromisos nacionales en planes de inversión factibles. NDC Invest consta de 4 elementos claves. NDC Programa. En base a nuestra experiencia, identificaremos las necesidades y las circunstancias climáticas actuales y venideras para crear las condiciones que permitirán la implementación de los planes de inversión, involucrando actores del sector público y privado. NDC Acelera. Apoyaremos los estudios de prefactibilidad y actividades necesarias para desarrollar carteras de inversión y asegurar la viabilidad técnica y financiera de cada proyecto. NDC Impulsa. Proveeremos recursos reembolsables y no reembolsables para generar nuevos modelos de negocio innovadores, pilotar instrumentos financieros adicionales y servicios de desarrollo de mercado. NDC Financia. Movilizaremos financiación de fuentes internas y externas para mitigar los riesgos de las inversiones climáticas acordes a las prioridades de los países y sus NDCs. En el Grupo Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, estamos aunando esfuerzos por integrar consideraciones climáticas y de sostenibilidad en las estrategias de desarrollo de los países. Tomando acción ahora, podremos asegurarnos que en el 2050 tendremos una región que produce alimentos de manera segura y sostenible, valora su biodiversidad y capital natural, alberga ciudades sostenibles diseñadas para sus ciudadanos, con economías, infraestructuras y comunidades resilientes a los impactos del clima y los desastres naturales. Únete en ndcinvest.org.
Muchísimas gracias a Amal-Lee y Amin. Bello video también, todos los videos que hemos tenido hoy. I'm speaking in Spanish, I'm sorry. Okay. I would like to congratulate the people that have exposed those videos. They're really fantastic. And now, in order to advance in the 21st century with innovations to combat climate change, we need research and technology. And our next speaker is Ren-Chin Wong from the Research Institute on Industrial Technology.
Hola, ¿cómo está? That's the only Spanish I know. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm Joseph Wayne from E3. We are located in Taiwan, just across from the Pacific from Guatemala. I'm very happy that previous presentation shows such a beautiful country and your effort in terms of preserving biodiversity, helping people, and also reduce CO2. And here, I would like to show you some of the technology that we have, and we are very happy that we can probably help the government of Guatemala and the people of Guatemala as you transition into a more prosperous nation. Maybe some of the technology you can find very useful of, and we are happy to share it with you. So today, in the short 5 minutes, I'll let you know what is E3 and what kind of technology in energy that we have invented, and also I'll show you some example that will help other countries using EBRDs, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development's money, to help different cities. And finally, I will give you some conclusion. Now, for this slide, I would like you to remember that E3, although we have a lot of funding from Taiwan's government, but we're a nonprofit organization. We have about 6,000 people, and we generate almost 1,000 patents a year, cover the area, primary environment, energy, electronic, machinery, this kind of technologies. Our main function is not in the industry side. It's not on the university academic research either. Our purpose is to bridge the gap, the so-called technology death valley. And what we would like to do is to convert good idea from university and make it realized to become a product or a service that's beneficial to human being. Currently, like I say, we have about 6,000 people. Our human quality is very good. About 1/4 has higher education. One thing I would like to let you know is we interact with industry heavily. For example, in the last year, we provide more than 18,000 service to local industry and international industry. And we are happy that if you can leverage this capability and experience. Now, in terms of research activity we have in energy and environmental area, one is energy efficiency and conservation. I think the climate in Guatemala is similar to Taiwan. In summer, it's hot and humid. We are very strong in air conditioner technology and also LED lighting that can save a lot of electricity that when you apply either on the street light or in the traffic light. Now, we also tap into our natural resource. For example, you mentioned geothermal in Guatemala, and we have also on the Pacific volcano ring, we also have that activity. Also the ocean energy, the wind energy, so far and so on. And those technologies and products and service, we are very happy to share with you just for the effort of climate change and climate control. One of the, I'll give you a few examples of what we are very strong at. First is solar industry, photovoltaic. We have a very solid industry chain from raw material all the way to system application, even including optimization of your solar farm. So that's few of the example. And you have a great, fantastic, very big solar farm. That's something that we envy of. And the other thing is as Guatemala grows into a modern nation, you must have a lot of big city. And in city, the built environment, energy efficiency is something very important. And we have extensive experience. And we have helped companies and buildings to reach LEED before that kind of status. Now, just to keep the time within 5 minutes, let's show you the LED industry. Again, like the solar industry, we have everything from raw material component to the final lighting. So in Taiwan, you can see all traffic light and traffic sign are in LED already. Even some of the road sign and street lights are in this. Now, we have totally installed more than 2 million of the street light, and that's the highest rate in the world. I think by the end of this year, Taiwan will replace 90% of our street light into LED light, and that local government likes it very much because save their electricity bill. They're really happy that this can be done. And now I just want to share you that since we have a very good LED industry and experience, we actually use EBRD fund help Georgia city of Tbilisi to change the street light into LED light. And because it's a cold place, snow in the winter, we have to design the light distance, the light angle to suit the local need. I believe that we have the capability to help Guatemala government to do the same thing. And the second is photovoltaic. And a lot of times you don't want to have a photo farm. You may just want to put photovoltaic with buildings. So we help different government country to survey the potential of putting BIPV in their building. And they can finally decide whether they would like to invest into the BIPV or they would not like just to have a PV farm. So those are the things that we have been doing, helping international organization and international country. At the end, I would like to conclude that green growth actually will help expanding the economy, not in population. And also environmental protection is something critical. I really envy your progress on this in this regard. However, to realize this green economy, government support is very crucial to motivate the companies at early stage and let them have right direction. And we are very happy to share this experience with Guatemala. And again, ITRE as a non-profit organization in Taiwan, we are happy to exchange experience with you. And I thank you very much for inviting me here to share our experience. The last Spanish I know is muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Renchiwo. And I would like to introduce you to one topic that has been on all the tables that I've seen in the COP. And it's regarding which has been the frosting of the cake. Alejandro Barrios, the representative of the Asociación Paz con el Ambiente Association in Peace with the Environment, will explain this to you.
Thank you. Mr. Sidney Samuels, Minister of the Environment, His Excellency Commissioner of Climate Change, Federico Franco, Vice Ministers of Climate Change and the Environment of the Minister of the Environment of Guatemala, government officials, esteemed cooperation organizations and guests. My name is Alejandro Barrios, and I'm honored to be here to present the Green Zone GT Electromobility Initiative, which is a mitigation action project for sustainable transportation and electromobility in Guatemala, which was presented already as a NAMA proposal in the fourth call. We are an NGO, which is called Association in Peace with the Environment, nonprofit, and is defined as a mitigation action project for sustainable transportation and electromobility in Guatemala in order to adapt to climate change and develop mechanism projects to promote the use of intelligent electric and hybrid vehicles in Guatemala as a national mitigation NAMA presented by the ministry to be funded by NAMA facility just on the fourth call on the 30th of October. The ministry has a technical and administrative agreement of cooperation with us for the development and implementation of our project. The implementing partners, you can see, is a cluster of public, academic, and private institutions. Of course, led by the minister, who I want to thank for his words that climate mitigation should be integral. So this is part of the Minister's vision for Guatemala NDC mitigation reduction. So we have private companies, the public institutions, and academy participating with us, and also the Guatemala Standard Committee. The projected scenario for Guatemala is the mitigation of greenhouse gases. The energy sector is the second most important sector with increased emission of greenhouse gases in Guatemala, and the transport subsector is responsible for 62% of carbon dioxide emissions, with 5.75 million tons of CO2 for a total of 31.45 million tons of CO2 in 2005. You can see the graph where ground transportation is very important as for emissions. In the 10-year scenario of the projection is to substitute 500,000 vehicles for electrical motorcycles, buses, public transport, minibuses, etc., or 8.62 of the vehicular park of the country, projected to 2025, achieving an estimated 0.14 million tons reduction of CO2 per year and a total of 1.45 million tons of CO2 within 10 years. The project rationale is the INDC of Guatemala 2015 for period 1990-2005 has grown up to 0.9 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions per year average. Guatemala plans a reduction of 11.2% of its greenhouse gases emissions from the base year 2005 projected to 2030. This reduction of 11.2 implies a bioscenario of 53.85 million tons of CO2 by 2030, which will be reduced to 47.81 million tons of CO2. Through the Electromobility and Sustainable Transport Initiative and Green Zone GT, a 10.45% will be contributed to the GHG emissions reduction INC established in 2015. Main three projects includes the substitution of the ministry's vehicle fleet for a complete electric vehicle fleet. And we want to congratulate the ministry and the minister for taking this action against GHG emissions. Then one of our master projects is, I'm sure all of you have heard of Antigua Guatemala, which is a cultural heritage patrimony of the humanity by UNESCO. We plan to have Antigua free of hydrocarbons by 2030. As for the INDCs of this project, this will reduce 57% of the emissions of Antigua by 2030, with 29.6 million tons of CO2 in up to 2030. Then, of course, also we are doing the green corridors, installing also the stations to charge the vehicles and the battery swapping stations, which our friends from Taiwan know very well. They have it installed in all the subway stations. And the beneficiary group through this NAMA is the public sector, private sector, and of course the end user. Projected scenario for Guatemala, project concept. 1, financing for institutionalization, standards creation for electromobility and sustainable transport in Guatemala, dissemination, training, and technology transfer to strengthening local capacities through the creation of political conditions and financial policies to integrate the use of electric vehicles in Guatemala. As for this, I will say that Guatemala already has applied the lowest import rate to electric vehicles, which is 5%, which is a big step towards this goal. The objective 2 finances the substitution of the ministry's vehicle fleet for electric vehicles. And again, Antigua Guatemala, by the implementation of transshipment centers, which is known as park and ride, green corridors with charging station, vehicular distribution points, and electric vehicles for passenger transportation. I was recently at Habitat 3, and I got the opportunity to present our project to several of the cooperation agencies that you are seeing below. And it had a real great acceptance, and we hope that some of you that are listening to us, especially the PID representative, will hear our plea to help us.
That's the end?
That was the end of the presentation.
Okay, so that's about it. And I want to thank you for your attention. Very
Thank you, Alejandro. Now, the private sector is key actor in the efforts to implement actions for adaptation and mitigation, and we have Estuardo Castillo representing CACIF, the Committee of Agriculture, Industry, Commerce, and Finance.
Hay un video que me dijeron que pusiera. Si quieres ponemos el video y termino hablando. Eso lo dejo.
Buenas noches. Tal vez solo un anuncio. AGEXPORT es la primera institución que somos de carbono neutral. Hemos sido certificados por más de 3 años y ha sido un verdadero éxito poder seguir continuando en esto. Y el otro año también estamos inaugurando el primer edificio también de una agencia como AGEXPORT. Estamos inaugurando nuestro primer edificio LED certificación Silver, y es muy probable que a finales logremos la Gold. Para comenzar esta exposición, yo quisiera hablar de tres temas muy importantes. Todos sabemos que Guatemala es uno de los países más vulnerables. Estamos entre los 10 primeros países más vulnerables de todo el mundo, por lo cual necesitamos tomar acciones ya de inmediatas para poder combatir este fenómeno. Nosotros nos unamos a los esfuerzos mundiales y las acciones que el país impulsa para hacer frente al cambio climático, trabajando con alianzas con el gobierno y otros sectores de la sociedad guatemalteca en la implementación de compromisos para el desarrollo sostenible y los acuerdos de París. Es importante resaltar que Guatemala y sus diferentes sectores han realizado esfuerzos muy importantes a nivel nacional para el desarrollo y la implementación de instrumentos de política que permitan adaptarse al cambio climático y tener un crecimiento muy bajo en carbono. Yo creo que ese es el futuro que todos anhelamos, que aquí en el 2050 tengamos ciudades muy bajas en carbono. Ya estamos viendo un ejemplo que acaban de presentar, que quieren una ciudad como Antigua sin carbón, ya una ciudad totalmente modernizada, con sistemas eléctricos, de transporte, etcétera. Ese es el futuro que queremos para nuestra Guatemala. También hemos tenido una participación muy activa siendo parte del Consejo Nacional de Cambio Climático, desde donde se han aportado en la creación conjunta e integradora de instrumentos como la contribución de los INDC y el Plan de Acción Nacional del Cambio Climático. Desarrollamos todos en conjunto y en AGEXPOR desarrollamos programas con pequeñas, medianas y grandes empresas y organizamos a los productores del área rural, como lo vieron en el video, para llevar la oportunidad de trabajo e ingresos a las comunidades más vulnerables del país. A pesar de los enormes avances que hemos hecho, hemos tenido aún grandes retos relacionados al cambio climático, entre los que puedo mencionar el reto de construir alianzas público-privadas para que el país realice inversiones estratégicas en temas y políticas de infraestructura y transferencia de tecnología. El día de ayer estaba oyendo a un científico donde decía, la tecnología que vamos a ver hoy no es la misma que vamos a ver en el 2030. Todo esto va a cambiar tan rápido que si no nos adaptamos a esta tecnología y no la traemos, no vamos a poder llegar y cumplir con nuestras metas del 2050. Es decir, que con parte del gobierno, iniciativa privada y todos los cooperantes podemos llegar a alcanzar el sueño de tener un país más limpio. Debemos de invertir en innovación, debemos de poner en innovación y traducir esta innovación en mejores oportunidades para los guatemaltecos. Innovar en los procesos productivos para generación de nuevos mercados y nuevos productos bajos en carbón y el fortalecimiento de las cadenas de valor que permitan llevar alternativas económicas para la generación de empleo, ingresos para el mejoramiento de los medios de vida de nuestra población. Para Guatemala, el reto es muy grande. Somos un país pequeño, con pocos recursos, pero con un gran corazón de hacer las cosas. Se requieren inversiones estratégicas, tenemos indicadores y metas de largo plazo, pero nos falta lo más importante, la implementación. Hacer y hacer las cosas. Yo creo que esa es nuestra meta del día de hoy. Ya tenemos los planes, tenemos hacia dónde queremos llevar, pero lo más importante es que lo tenemos que hacer. Esos planes que tenemos que hacer todos los días y todos los días tenemos que ir viendo si vamos cumpliendo nuestras metas. Y nosotros queremos ver a Guatemala de la siguiente forma. Estamos comprometidos con este proceso y seguir trabajando para la construcción de una mejor Guatemala. Una Guatemala más innovadora, más competente, sostenible y con bajo carbón. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Estuardo. Y antes de pasar a preguntas y respuestas, quiero comentarles que el día jueves en el Salón Rabat estaremos teniendo una conferencia de prensa. Es muy importante que si ustedes tienen amigos que son periodistas, que asistan a esta conferencia de prensa. Es en el Salón Rabat a las 2:30 de la tarde, de 2:30 a 3. Así es pues que los esperamos. Y ahora preguntas y respuestas, por favor. Tenía que haberlo dicho en inglés. Okay, the floor is open for questions and answers. And I was just saying that On Thursday, we're going to have a press conference in the meeting room from 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you have friends that are journalists, invite them over because we're going to be showing our official video of Guatemala. And it would be very nice to have our journalists from all over the world in our meeting. So the floor is open for questions and answers. Any questions? You may raise your hand. Yes.
Your Excellency, Vice Ministers, colleagues, congratulations for all the excellent work that's being done. My name is Jason Spencer with the Climate Technology Center and Network, the implementation arm of the technology network of the convention. At the beginning of this session, it was mentioned that how vulnerable Guatemala is to climate change, or vulnerable countries, and some of the videos referenced adaptation activities. I'd be interested to know where you see to be your primary adaptation priorities for Guatemala. Primary adaptation priorities.
Maybe I can start to answer this, and maybe someone from the table can complement. Well, the priority that we have seen since we got to the minister, to the ministry, we found that this dry area that is in Guatemala, which is called the Corredor Seco, there is where we are having the priority to work for that people that is dying of hunger because of dryness, of the floor that is very dry over there. Guatemala has a lot of hydraulic reserves, has a lot of water. It's something like 95,000 cubic meters yearly that is available. We only use 10% of that. The rest of the water goes to the seas, to the Caribbean Sea, to the Pacific Ocean, and to Mexico. That means that we are not doing the right things. So we have to start to see how we can manage our natural resources, and above all, the water. That's my priority, and that's what I'm working for. Alcalde, the Mayor Tito was exposing this project to be scaled at that area, and that is what we would like to do. May someone like to, yes, please?
Just to complement the answer, basically the situation we have in Guatemala, like in many parts of the world, is extremes of rainfall. Many years with very little rainfall, like we have had recently, and then we have a problem like the minister was addressing, agriculture with rain-fed agriculture being under a lot of stress. But then we have the opposite of extreme rainfall, and that we saw a lot of last decade. And so together with managing water in very dry years, we also need technology, very simple technology actually, to develop early warning systems when we have extreme rainfall. There's a lot of people under high vulnerability because of storms. And we are not talking about a hurricane here. We're just talking about heavy rainfall that is enough to create landslides. So technology also to develop early warning systems will be highly needed.
Any other? Yes.
My name is Eva Sufina. I'm representing Polish, from the Foundation of Polish Green Party, and here I am in the team of observers of Green European Foundation. My question concerns the 11 concessions for the forest management that you have presented. I'm very much interested what is the form of management of those concessions. Are they managed by the community or by a private entity or by local collectivity? That's my question.
Que lo conteste el de ACOFOP.
Good afternoon. Yes, the forest concessions, 9 of them are community concessions. They work together with forest management plans, planning 25, 30 years. They have plans for every 5 years and an annual work plan. They use only 1 tree per hectare per year. And they use also only the trees that are proper to harvest. They leave the mother and the father trees, so they can harvest in the cycle of 25 or 30 years. There are 2 forest industrial concessions also that they do industrial timber extracting. Okay.
Thank you. Any other? We can call it one more question. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Marjorie Vena from Perspectives. We have seen very interesting examples of NAMA developed in the country. I was wondering what would be the next steps? What are the priority sectors for the future for NAMA development?
Priority sectors. Well, we can talk about the NAMA priority. I have said, as I have said before, the water resource, that's, I think, is the priority number 1. Oscar?
Based on the interinstitutional cooperation, the Minister Samuels has opened the door for multiple sectors. So there are at least 3 ways to present proposals to NAMA facility. They are agriculture sector. There was a meeting with the minister and the CNCG cluster of NGOs, national and international, about palm oil, coffee in one hand. In the second sector is related with management, solid waste management, because that is a priority for the country also. And in the third case, it is very related with private sector, which includes transport sector.
Thank you. Now, we would like to call on the commissioner, the Presidential Commissioner on Climate Change, Licenciado Franco, and we would like him to give the closing words, please.
Buenas noches, señor ministro, distinguidas personalidades que lo acompañan. Es para mí un honor cerrar este evento que preparó el país. Un trabajo fuerte, importante, que es un evento que nos complace haberlo observado y para mí es un honor cerrarlo. Algunas ideas para dejar en el ambiente y dejar en las mentes. La cooperación interinstitucional debe enfocarse a hombres y mujeres, fundamentalmente gente del campo, porque el cambio climático tiene rostro humano. Compartir los retos, estrategias, mecanismos de cooperación para lograr resultados se podrá hacer conectando más gente a procesos y propuestas. La cooperación entre las instituciones necesita tener muy claro que yo colaboro, coopero, pero que debo someterme a mecanismos fuertes y serios de coordinación. Durante las presentaciones, ustedes observaron que el gobierno y los sectores seriamente enfrentando el reto, Los sectores han dado información muy importante que nosotros presentamos un frente, de repente uno de los más completos de América Latina. Nosotros tenemos desde la Ley de Áreas Protegidas hace más de 25 años, empezamos a trabajar en el cambio climático que nadie comentaba, que nadie decía. Tenemos alrededor del 33% del país protegido en acciones costosas, pero muy importantes, con instituciones que tienen pocos recursos financieros, pero que tienen mucho deseo de apoyar. Tenemos además 7 elementos, por lo menos, como una política de cambio climático, una ley de cambio climático, un Consejo Nacional de Cambio Climático, un plan de acción recientemente aprobado, compromisos de París ratificados por el presidente de la República, Jimmy Morales, en abril en Naciones Unidas y por el Congreso de la República recientemente. Una gobernanza clara y sencilla, que sea la plataforma política y legal para favorecer la participación y sobre todo la acción, es el tema. Nosotros creemos que el cambio climático ya no es un tema, es una realidad. El tema es acción. El tema es tener clara la visión y accionar fuertemente con la visión al futuro, con una responsabilidad ambiental transgeneracional. Recientemente se han planteado de nuevo las cuentas nacionales, dentro de las cuentas nacionales, las cuentas ambientales. Nosotros tenemos que saber claro, aplicando el método científico, que si no sabemos lo que perdemos o lo que podemos mantener en términos físicos del territorio, pero sobre todo financiero, no podemos hacer ecuaciones predictivas para dónde vamos y qué es lo que vamos a encontrar. Escucharon proyectos como la Candón, como las concesiones forestales, como el proyecto Caribe, y ustedes vieron en las fotos a la gente campesina. Ustedes no vieron a técnicos jugando a que sé o que no sé en salones. Ustedes vieron gente campesina haciendo cosas, logrando cosas y demostrando que ellos son los verdaderos actores del desarrollo sostenible. Nosotros creemos que el desarrollo sostenible son los recursos naturales, pero sobre todo la mujer rural y el hombre. Muchas gracias, ministro, por dejarme esta oportunidad.
Muchas gracias, señor ministro. Muchas gracias a todos. Les agradecemos el haber venido a este side event y agradecemos también a USAID, CNSG, Rainforest Alliance, WWF, Nature Conservancy, la Climate Change Science System, Defensores de la Naturaleza, Asociación Paz con el Ambiente, ACOFOP y AGEXPORT. Buenas noches.
Muy bien, muy bien.
Una foto aquí con Amal-Lee.
Solo recordarles que hay un refrigerio allá afuera esperando para todos, aquí al lado derecho.
Thank you very much.